right, so I'm logged in to Campus Extension. This is the curriculum that Catherine just showed. And at the very bottom of this curriculum and the putting it all together is this one link that goes to a Google Drive folder. To do this, I'm just going to click on this link.
I see it says Windows PC. Does this not work on a Mac?
It does not work on a Mac, unfortunately. And we do have this set up to be virtual, but we need some goggles for that. And I think in the creation of the game, we ended up making it kind of more text heavy to introduce some concepts throughout the gameplay. And so for that reason, we suggested that it's more of a desktop game. Once you click on that, you're sent to the WeFarm game files. And you can see that we have our PC game built here, our Android build, and our user manual. So what I would suggest doing is to download everything.
Does this work on a Chromebook?
Should work. I believe it does, but Catherine, can you verify that?
Yeah, I think anything that it basically just doesn't work on an Apple device or a Mac. So it should be set for other types of devices.
Okay, thanks.
You can see that we get this pop-up that says can't scan file for viruses. We built this with a trusted company, Game Theory in Burlington, so I think it's safe to download it anyway. You can choose which file it goes to, but in this case, it went straight to my downloads folder. So I'll click here. Okay, so can you see the file folder with the different folders in it?
Yes.
Thank you. So yeah, as Heather was describing, like the purpose of WeFarm was to bring the farm fields to the students instead of the students going to the fields. In a way to kind of introduce them to some of these concepts in a way that was fun to interact with. So we have a bunch of different folders here. All of these need to be downloaded in order to run the game, but the only icon you need to click to actually run the game is this orange one titled WeFarm. It's got the VR goggles with a little farm in it. So we'll double click that. And you kind of get this like scary blue window that, hey, are you sure you want to run this app? Again, this was created with a trusted company, and so it doesn't look like there's in any immediate way to enter the game. What you have to do is click the more info button right here. And then a button pops up that says run anyway. So we'll click that. And here we now have the WeFarm configuration where it's syncing the system requirements of the game with what's available on your computer. So in general, we don't really mess around with any of these pieces. So you can just go ahead and click play. It's made with Unity. And it starts here in a moment with a little bit of an introduction. So we'll welcome you to WeFarm. Again, it's made with Game Theory. WeFarm stands for Water and Environment Farm Assessment and Risk Management. It's a decision-making tool, and Game Theory is based out of Burlington. We started WeFarm by creating a water quality focused game, and then this last year, we were able to create a second game that focuses more on soil quality. And this is just a little bit about how to navigate through the game. You can see we have like this black dot as our cursor. You can hover on the buttons to have them fill in, to click through. And there's no exit button on a lot of these pages. So you'll just need to press the escape button on your keyboard in order to exit the game. But once you exit, all your progress is lost. There's not a way to save the game. And the games are rather quick. So 20 minutes for the water quality one and maybe 10 to 15 for each of the soil health scenarios. So here we have our two games. If you want to exit the application here, you can click the quit on the upper left-hand corner. And you can see like this is designed to be a 3D environment. So we've got our ground here, we have our forest, our field, there's even the farmer's truck over here. And you can see we've got our cornfield set up here as well. And I'd like to start by walking through the water quality game. So I'm just going to use my cursor to hover on that icon. And here we're introduced to our farm. And basically what the goal of this game is to allow students to walk through different farm fields, see some potential issues, and then make recommendations. I think that there are kind of two different approaches through this game. One is more exploratory in nature, where there's a discussion about, well, what could possibly be causing the issue, and what are the trade-offs of a particular management method to address the issue for the farmer. Another one might be more based on a grading type of capability, which is looking at, well, what is the best water quality management method that could be taken that will result in minimizing the most risk. And this just walks you through a little bit of what to expect in the game. So you'll see these orange circles and you'll hover on the orange circle to identify the issue and make any management recommendations. And after you make each choice, there's a water quality indicator that appears. And so if you're choosing a management method that protects water quality, your water quality meter increases further towards the green zone. If you choose an action that does less to minimize harm to water quality, then the water quality meter decreases more to the red zone. And then at the end, after we've gone through all the different fields and all the different scenarios, you kind of get some feedback on how well you did overall. There's a little preview of the different fields we'll be going to. The first one is a cornfield. The second one is pasture, focused on grazing. And the third one is a hay field. We're going to start in the cornfield today. So we can just kind of scope around here. We got our forest, we've got a little bit of corn stubble here, our action or indicator. And we've got a river over here. Just kind of scoping it out a little bit. Our ground, you can see we've got our clipboard here. Not much to do here. Just, you know, if you're out looking at fields, you might want to take a clipboard with you to take some notes. So we wanted to bring that with us. I'm going to hover here to get some text on what we've got. It says we've identified our risk, and because we're already starting with the risk, our water quality meter is rather low. Let's see what that is. The corn crops here were harvested. You can see the stubble there in the background, and now our soil is bare. So what do we want to do about it? We have these three options. We can plant cover crop seed into the soil with a drill. We can put cover crop on the seed with broadcast, or we can leave it as is. And this is one of those places where, again, you can have a conversation with your students saying, you know, it's the end of the field season, and you have a lot of other tasks as a farmer to do. What's going to make the most sense for you? And so maybe in this scenario, the farmer's thinking, yes, I definitely want to put cover crop down. I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot of other things going on. So I might broadcast because it's a little bit quicker. And so in order to choose that action, we'll hover on the check mark here. You can see that we have this little radial dial that decreases over time because that advances the game play for you in lieu of hovering on the button and having it play. So some time passes. You can also click the cursor to speed it up. And the cover crops are sparsely covering the field, right? Because we've done some broadcast. If we had done drilled, it would be more filled in with the cover crop. So now we're getting our feedback. We minimize some water quality risk, but more work still needs to be done. And we can see our water quality meter has gone up a little bit from our orange to our yellow. We're still in this field because there is another indicator. And if you're right now sitting here having questions like, well, how does broadcast impact cover crop establishment versus drill? This is something that the companion curriculum that Catherine showed earlier would help fill in with one of those lessons. Right, so now we can see in the field, there's like this little bit of a dip here, and we know that that's a little bit different. So let's see what that is. Click on the water quality indicator here. And now it says, oh, it looks like we have some serious erosion. What do we want to do about it? We look down here, we can see that there's a little bit of, not quite gully, but moved on from real erosion. Our soil's moving off the forest and through our bare field. And we have some options here. We can plant the cover crop and seed it to drill to cover it. We can install a grass waterway, or again, farmers' labs are busy and maybe they don't have quite enough time to do something about it. So in this instance, again, you can have a discussion with your students, or maybe because you've already gone through the curriculum with your students, they'll say, oh, you know what, I'm going to install a grass waterway. You know, I've got time to do that. It's worth it. I want to keep my soil and nutrients on my field. We're going to take that action. We'll click through this a little bit. Again, some time passes because it takes some time for the management method you're choosing to actually establish. And now we see that our water quality meter's gone up a little bit more because we've really slowed the flow of water down with our grass waterway. And this helps reduce nutrients in soil moving in the waterway. So here's our grass waterway down here. And now we've completed our corn level and we're going to go on to our pasture level. I know I'm saying level here, but these don't necessarily increase in difficulty. It's more of just different scenarios, but saying level kind of gamifies it a little bit more. So now we can see we've got our hay field here, ground again surrounded by forest, our cows in the river, and we've got our water quality indicators. So let's see what it has to say. So the cow's footpath is eroding the stream bank. We can see there's a little bit coming off right here. What do we want to do? We could build a fence and give them a water tub. We could plant vegetation along the stream bank, or we could let the cows roam. And again, this is a great time to have conversations with your students about what are the trade-offs of each one of these. You know, if you are to build a fence and give them a water tub, that is the method that reduces the most risk to water quality. On the other hand, it takes a lot more infrastructure and planning in order to make that happen on some of the pasture fields. So again, for this one, we're going to take the middle line here because we want to do something, but we don't have enough time or enough finances to do everything. So we'll plant the vegetation along the stream bank. And again, I'm just going to let my cursor hover on that check mark. We're taking that action. We'll click continue. Again, some time will pass. We can see our water quality meter's gone up a little bit, but we've had some wiggle room to do a little bit more had we actually fenced them out, because when the animals go into the stream bank, they can bring nutrients with them. And we have another scenario to check out here. So let's go see what else we have on our pasture field. And I'm going to click hover here on our little water quality icon. We can already see that there's something going on here. We have these patches of brown in our pasture. And it's because it's overgrazed. So that means that the animals are nibbling that grass down pretty far or trampling it and exposing some bare ground. So we have three options for each of our scenarios. We have three options. We can reseed the pasture, we can rotate the cows among small paddocks, or we can do nothing because the cows know what they like. And this is something too that, again, with the companion curriculum, we'll kind of dive into how these different management methods can impact our fields and our water quality, and also some animal health as well. So for this, we're just gonna choose the rotate cows among small paddocks. It's something the farmer's been thinking about for a while, and that's what they would like to choose. And they're working with maybe folks to help them make that happen. So continue here. Again, some time will pass. And our water quality is advanced a good amount. And that's because the paddocks will help us manage our animals, manage our fields a little bit more concisely than just reseeding. We can kind of look around too, and we can see our fences up here. They're not in the river right now. So we've done good work here, and we've done as much as we could to minimize the risk. So now that we've done the pasture, we'll move on to our final scenario, the hay fields. And just kind of look around here again, we've got our same woods and we've got our river here. our hay field. And then we have this perennial buffer here. One of the requirements for Vermont state agriculture is that there needs to be a 25-foot buffer between any surface water and a field. And it just needs to be perennial. So it is something that can be harvested. But let's see what water quality issue may be arising here. We've identified a risk. See what it is. So we can see that our hay field right here has just been harvested and it's time to apply manure. So how do we want to apply it? Do we want to apply it right up to the 25-foot buffer, right up to the stream bank, or leave a 20-foot setback in addition to the buffer? So that would be 20 feet beyond the buffer here. Maybe the farmer's looking at the weather, looking at the field, thinking about how many nutrients were removed when they harvested their bumper crop of hay, and how many nutrients need to be replenished so that their next harvest can also have a high yield and be of high quality as well. So maybe this farmer will, plant or apply manure right up to the 25-foot buffer. And take that action. Wait for some time to pass. You can see our water quality meter's gone up a bit, and we've left a little bit of risk because we didn't put that manure setback in. That manure setback in is totally optional for farmers and is mostly used in cases where there might be some weather issues arising or field conditions that would make a farmer want to put a buffer or a setback in addition. So now we're going on to our second scenario of our hay field, and here we have a light rainfall beginning. We'll look around. Again, we'll hover on our water, our risk indicator. And again, our field is harvested. It's already started to rain. It looks like more is coming. What do we want to do? And again, we have our three options. We can inject the manure today below the surface. We can spread the manure across the field by broadcast, or we can wait and spread later. And again, this might be one of the things that you can have a conversation with your students about, saying, maybe the farmer really wants to inject, knowing that that's going to minimize risk to water quality the most, but maybe they don't have access to that equipment. And maybe it's at a time in their season where they need to spread to empty their pit or reduce their stack. And so waiting to spread later might not really be an option. So we're going to choose the midline. We'll spread the manure across the field. Then we'll wait for some time to pass. And now we can see that our water quality meter has gone down because that really left some risk for since it was broadcast over the surface, for the rain to move it through the buffer and into the river. Minimal risk, but again, this is a game, so we needed to have some potential going on here for the water quality meter to go down. So now we're going to look at a potential risk later in the season, and we got some snowfall, which can happen outside the spreading band, right? We've seen like this happen in November. We'll look around, and we'll hover on our water quality indicator. And so now we know it snowed an inch. So what do we want to do? Again, we can inject the manure below the surface. We can spread the manure anyway, or we can wait for the snow to melt and spread later. And again, this really brings up those conversations of, what are the trade-offs from each one of these? What does the farmer have available? And maybe at this point in the season, the farmer has contracted with with a custom applicator of manure who has injection, and they need to empty their pit, so we're going to inject it. It's kind of the middle of the road here. We'll take this action, and a few days later, and now our water quality meter has gone up a bit because it's still a little risky to put manure down when there's snow on the ground, and that there might be some potential for harming water quality. So we've gone through all different types of field scenarios and all different scenarios in those fields. And so we'll see what our final score is. So we kind of, and I intentionally did this, kind of riding that midline of what you have minimizing water quality. So had we chosen all the options to really protect water quality as much as possible, then we would have gotten all 3 stars. But this shows some room for improvement. So, again, as a teacher, it depends on how you want to approach using this game as a conversation piece to discuss some challenges and opportunities with different management methods, or as a grading piece. And this is where you might be able to see where they were falling on that line and record it. So with that as a caveat of, once a student plays either the water quality level or at one of the soil health scenarios, the grades don't get, or the final result doesn't get saved anywhere. So this is something you'd have to like look at the screen and jot down if you did want to use it for some type of grading mechanism. And it's one of those things too that like students can play it more than once, so they can use it as an exploratory tool the first time or second time or third time, and then approach it on a final time as a assessment. I'm going to click level select, and it brings us back to this main pathway where again we can go back into the water quality levels and go through the same scenarios, or we can click the soil health game. So from here, we can always go back to that main page we just came from, or we can choose one of 7 different scenarios. We have 5 corn scenarios and 2 hay scenarios. We didn't label them by what you're assessing them for because we kind of wanted that to be a surprise. The purpose of the soil health game is that each student is able to go choose a scenario and then use different tools to assess the field or assess the crop, and then make a recommendation to the farmer to see how that assessment has impacted the soil health and potentially the crop. And so this is a little bit more involved than the water quality game in terms of tutorial setup within the game. So a lot of our companion curriculum helps reinforce some of these ideas, but just in case you didn't go there, we can also have this kind of standalone tutorial, and that's this little how to play that's bumping up and down over here. Again, we just have a little bit of an intro here. This is, We Farm, describing what this is a little bit. Again, we have those different soil health scenarios. And what this is. So again, we have those 7 different scenarios. You'll walk through them. You'll be able to see what they look like, and you'll be able to choose a tool. The idea, right, is that the higher the soil health, the higher the likelihood is that we're protecting our environment, both in water and air and soil. And through that, we are also having higher yielding, better quality crops. But before we kind of dive into this, we wanted to give an overview of what some of the different soil health properties are and tools that can be used to assess them. Soil health, has 3 main components: the biological, chemical, and physical. And they're often interconnected. It's really hard to just tease them apart and them not relate to one of the others. And again, soil health is important because it can help protect our environment, but it also can improve farm viability through consistently yielding high quality crops. So we have poor soil health that can lead to nutrient deficiencies and potential for some environmental risks. You can see here that at any time we can go back to the previous slide or advance, and then we have the number of slides below as we keep clicking through. So now we'll go through some metrics of physical, chemical, and biological properties that will be present in the game. So one of them is compaction. Compaction can limit root growth, which means that later in the season that the plants don't have access to as many nutrients and water as they would typically have if there was a loose, healthy soil. In each one of these slides, we define what the metric is, how it impacts plants, how it can impact soil, and then what the measurement the tool of measurement is. So in this case, to measure compaction, we use a penetrometer, this little icon here, which is measured in pounds per square inch. And students will see this in the actual gameplay. Our next biological or physical property is aggregate stability, and this measures how well the soil can hold together during rainfall. It's measured with rainfall simulator, and you can see these comparisons here with on low. When we use the rainfall simulator, it kind of flattens out, but if we have high aggregate stability here on the right, the soil really pulls together, and this can be an indicator for the potential for erosion. And our little icon is this little rain cloud for the aggregate stability. Moving on to biological properties, organic matter is a huge one. You can see on the left that low organic matter has lighter in color, whereas a soil with higher organic matter is darker in color. And this influences the amount of carbon in the soil and the amount of soil aggregate stability, water retention, and nutrient cycling. The way that it's measured is by loss on ignition. So literally burning the soil at a really high temperature, and whatever's left is the mineral matter. So what was burned off is organic. And that's why we have like this little oven type icon to describe that. Also in biological, we have soil respiration, which measures the activity of microbial life in the soil. So low respiration typically means that there's less microbes, and more respiration means that it's, or high respiration means that there are more microbes, and it's used by measuring carbon dioxide. And we use a soil respiration kit to measure that. And that's why we have this little jar in here with the soil and a little sticky pad that changes color depending on how much carbon dioxide is emitted. Other biological properties include soil protein, which measures the amount of nitrogen that microbes can readily mineralize for the plant. So kind of dovetails with soil respiration, but is more specific for those particular microbes that facilitate nitrogen nutrient cycling. And this is analyzed by taking a soil sample, and that's why we have this little probe here. And then that material is analyzed with a spectrophotometric plate reader. All right, so now moving on to chemical properties. One of the measurements that we have in the game is pH, which measures the acidity or alkalinity of the soil, and this can influence nutrient availability. So if our pH isn't optimal for that particular crop, there's lower nutrient availability. If it is optimal for the crop, then it has better nutrient availability. And we use this little pH meter as the icon, because that's how it is measured. More through here. And again, this tutorial is something that students can skip, but I thought it might be helpful just to walk through it today, so that when we go through the scenarios, you understand a little bit about, or you know a little bit more about what to expect. So for this other chemical property, it's just a nutrient index measurement. So again, this would measure how many nutrients are plant available for the in the soil, so whether it's low or high. And again, to measure that, we take a soil sample, send it to the lab, and they use a spectrometer to analyze that. And we also have observation as a way of thinking about our soil and our soil health. You know, you can use a shovel and you can look at the aggregate stability, you can feel it, you can look at any of the megafauna that may be present in your soil, like worms or any pore spaces. So there's another way of thinking about your soil health. With more organisms, the healthier the soil is, and our icon to measure that is the shovel. Another way, of course, is also observing your crop itself. How is it looking? Is it looking vibrant, green, and healthy? Or does it have yellow on the margins, maybe symbolizing or as a symptom of potassium deficiency or nitrogen deficiency, or other markings on the plant could be indicators of other nutrient deficiencies like phosphorus. Or is the plant stunted? Is it not growing as quickly and as robustly, or is the yield low? These can all be indicators of poor soil health, in particular low nutrient availability or compaction, or even sometimes too little water, or in other times too much water. Which again can be related to soil health and its ability to retain water or otherwise let it infiltrate. Okay, so we've gone through the nuts and bolts, some of the background information to play the game. So now we're going to talk a little bit about actual gameplay nuances. So just like in the water quality level, we have this orange circle. And instead of that being a water quality risk indicator, this is a bubble where you can hover on it and a tool will appear, and then you can choose to measure that particular metric for assessment. After you measure that particular metric, you'll get a result. It'll explain a little bit about what it is and talk a little bit more about that in the gameplay. See, there's a paragraph to explain that. And then once you go through as many metrics or as few metrics as you'd like, you have the option to make a recommendation to the farmer. Once you make that recommendation, you get some feedback about how that recommendation impacted the soil and the field and the crop. And we have this caveat here, and we should also have it in with the water quality level, but just, you know, a disclaimer, right, that just because you're doing something online in a virtual field doesn't guarantee that you'll have those same results in actual life if you were to do them. Typically, yes, you plant cover crops, your soil health has improved, but that might take years to accomplish instead of 1 or 2. And there might be other management methods or other weather conditions that influence that impact. Okay, so we've gone through the whole tutorial, or how to play a stop bumping or jumping, because we've gone through that. And so now I'd like to walk through just one of the scenarios to show how it can look. I'm going to choose corn D. And it just says, hey, you're in a cornfield and you notice the corn's not growing well. We can look around and we can see we've got this nice green corn over here and some off-color corn here. So we know something's not going as planned here. We also have our farmer truck here and our hay. I'm just going to click continue. So again, we have all these options to measure our soil health. We don't know what they are yet, so let's go take a peek at them. This is our soil probe, and we found here that our nutrients, phosphorus and potassium, are okay. They're doing all right. And then we have a little bit of a description about how phosphorus and potassium influence crop growth. We'll click continue. And after we take each measurement, we are automatically pointed to a report. So we'll see, you know, now we have our other nutrients and a general rating. And as we go through the indicators, our report will fill up. But anytime you have a question about how the gameplay works, or you want to know a little bit more about respiration organic matter, you can always click or go to the instructions and I'll walk you through that tutorial. You can always come back to my report. And then there's a My Notes section. This note section is built off of observation, so we haven't done anything yet, so there's nothing to fill in. The other thing I wanted to quickly touch on here before doing the other metrics in measurements are that we have the first results. So the first time you come here, what the soil health measurements were for all those metrics, followed by the latest results. The idea being that you can choose an action, come back, fill in your latest, take the same measurements and see how things differed with that action. And you can go back and choose a different action and change the measurements again, or redo the measurements to see what your latest results are. So we can get out of our clipboard by clicking this little X. And we can always go back to our clipboard at any time by looking down here, opening it up. And now that we've done our first measurements, you can also see we've got a couple other icons. We've got this little door so we can exit the game. And just as a reminder, you can also always press escape to exit the game. And then we can also go visit to make a recommendation. We're not quite ready for that, so I'm going to go through and click our other metrics. And we have, I think, all tools, or pretty much all tools, available in all scenarios. Here we measured nutrient availability through pH, actually, sorry. We measured pH, and our pH is really poor. That means that our soil doesn't have access to nutrients. So you can see that we've, in these paragraphs here of explanation, are also reintroducing some of the same concepts in the tutorial. Our pH is low. You can also start seeing here that our results are different. We have an okay for nutrients. It's just a general result, whereas in pH we have a actual reading, a number associated with that, and then they're color coded, right? So other nutrient, or okay is just okay, and our pH is very less than optimal, so it's red, kind of a this might need some attention situation. We'll go here to aggregate stability. We know that from our tutorial with the rain cloud, our aggregate stability is good. So during rainfall, our soil stayed in place. Continue. Again, we can see our results here. I'm going to quickly go through the other indicators, just so that we can see a filled out report. But knowing that you have access to this game at any time to go back and reread and think about some of the descriptions of each of these indicators and how they may or may not relate to your class, or how you might want to teach them. But I think the idea is that as students are walking through these, they're reading and understanding a little bit more, reinforcing the concepts that they're learning. Our penetrometer here, low compaction. And then here's our shovel or observation. And now we have our notes automatically pops up for our, in place of one of our reports. Because we used a shovel, we see we have a few worms, there's good root growth and larger pores. So now when I look at my report, just kind of looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, so we took all those measurements, and the things that are in red are pH and my nitrogen availability. And my things that are not doing so well are respiration, other nutrients. But my organic matter is good, my aggregate stability is good, and my compaction is good. And I'm just thinking about this as a first glance, just looking at the color coding. So now that we have an idea of what our issues might be, the ones in red, and we can roll out some options because of what's in green, let's think about what recommendations we can make to the farmer. So I'm going to close our clipboard using the X, and I'm going to come over to our farmer over here and see what our recommendations are. So what do we want to do? Here are 4 options. We can rotate with sod, we can add fertilizer, we can plant shallow rooted cover crops, or we can add lime. So I'm going to come back here to my report just to double check. And I'm thinking like, okay, if we rotate with sod, that would probably increase organic matter, could reduce compaction, it would increase aggregate stability, but those are pieces that I'm doing okay in. So maybe I don't need to quite do that in order to improve my soil health. What were my other options? I could add fertilizer, plant shallow rooted cover crops, or add lime. Well, fertilizer seems like it might be a good idea because my other nutrients aren't doing well and my nitrogen's not doing so well. But really, it seems like based off of our tutorial, we might think that pH would be, changing pH might be the best option, because that would change, it would increase the pH, but it would also make other nutrients more available. So I think just based off of the report and our actions, the best option might be to add lime. So that'll be applied, sometime later we'll pass. And now we can go back and make those same assessments and see what impact it had on the soil health. Then after we do that, we can go see what the farmer has to say. I'm going to close out of this. And now that we've done this, all our icons are present. And again, I'm just going to quickly go through these because I want to show you what a filled out report looks like. So we can see that comparison. One thing that is not available in this gameplay, but if you wanted to add some more to help complete the learning cycle, you could print the screen of the final report and the comparison by pressing print screen and then saving that as an image, and then having the students talk a little bit about how their management impacted the soil health and what they suspect might happen as a result to their crop. And I'll show you what that means, or that could look like in a little bit. We'll talk about it next, so we'll show you. All right. So I'm gonna close this. We've taken all our metrics. I'm gonna come back down here to our clipboard, and now we're gonna look at our report. So we have our first results that we took before we took an action, and now we have our latest results. And what I like about this as an example, right, is that we can see that once we increased pH, it went to green. And it also changed our other nutrients because it's increasing nutrient availability. And it's also increasing our soil respiration because microbes also operate at an optimal pH. And that in turn also increased our nitrogen amount because more microbial activity means that we might have more nitrogen. However, adding pH didn't really change our organic matter or aggregate stability or our compaction. Those aren't necessarily quite as tightly correlated with pH as the others. And then we can go to our notes and also see that it didn't really impact the amount of earthworms or our root growth. So that's the kind of comparison I'm talking about that students would say, well, why did pH change these other things and also not change other metrics? Those look like we did a pretty good job. We turned a lot of yellow and red numbers into green numbers, but let's see what the farmer has to say. We'll close out of this using X, and we'll come over to our little paper here, and we get a much improved. Adding lime can increase the soil pH, which results in a better environment for soil biology, and can make nutrients such as phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium more available to the crop. And now that we are done with this scenario, we can move on to the next scenario. We can do that by clicking visit next field, and from here, the students can choose any of the other fields that they haven't been to, or they can play the same one. So that wraps up WeFarm